Do me a favor, grab your Steam Deck, boot into desktop mode, click on the start button, and then type in Info Center. Then click on Energy. What is your battery health at right now, and how long have you had your Steam Deck for? Leave a comment below with that information. If you don't have a Steam Deck yet, just post your favorite game of all time for engagement. Now, why am I asking this? You guys remember Lloyd, right? He was my co-host on Deck. He was my co-host on StadiaCast, and for 3 years, I talked to that guy like every single day. Miss you, buddy. Anyway, he sent me this screenshot of his Steam Deck, and in 1 year, he has lost nearly 20% of his battery health. That is crazy. Now, this could just be an issue with his Steam Deck, but the only way for us to find out is to ask all of you for your battery health. I checked mine, which is a pre-release unit, and its battery health is sitting at 100%. To me, that seems just as unlikely as Lloyd losing 19% of his battery in just 1 year. Now, Lloyd reached out to Valve and he said they asked him to run some tests. Here's what they said. We have a few tasks and questions for you to help us determine how to address this issue. Before beginning troubleshooting, please ensure that you've ejected the micro SD card and disconnected all external devices aside from the provided power supply. Go into desktop mode and click on the battery icon in the lower right system tray. Do you see any warnings there regarding your battery health? If you do see a warning, please provide us with a photo of how it appears in the UI. Number 3, let the unit charge using the original power supply until it shows at least 90%. Ensure no games are running, then unplug it and leave it idle. Check on the battery every 60 minutes. Let us know approximately what percentage you are losing per hour. Plug the unit back in using the original power supply and confirm for us whether or not it continues to lose percent while on the charger. I also had him temporarily put his Steam Deck into battery storage mode, which is one of the steps that I had to go through when I was replacing the shell of my Steam Deck. Now, one thing that I think is important to understand here is that Lloyd has replaced the stock SSD with a 1 terabyte SSD. I'm not sure if that is going to have any effect on the battery life of his system, but that's something I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew about. He's been pretty busy, but after he's tested those things and heard back from Valve, he did say that he would give us all an update. But let me know below that like button, what's your battery health at? How old is your Steam Deck? And have you made any mods to it? Speaking of Steam Deck, we just got another update to SteamOS, and no, it's not the SteamOS 3.5 that I told you months ago was right around the corner. In my own defense, when I said that, Valve was putting out update after update after update, and right after I put out that video, everything that they were doing slowed to a crawl, probably because they were getting things more and more stable. Well, this patch does have a bunch of fixes as well as a few new features, but for me, the biggest shoutouts are all in Steam Input. You can now copy and paste mapping in Steam Input when setting up controller inputs. This should make it easier for you to make a new layout for a game that's similar to other games that you think you already have good layouts for. Of course, you could have always just exported your layout as a template previously, but that kind of clogged things up with a mountain of different templates. Copy and paste may end up having more steps, but ultimately I think it's probably a cleaner way to do things, and I'm glad that we now have multiple options. Next up, they've improved navigation in the configurator when navigating from the preview screen. Previously, going back and forth a bunch used to kind of build up a stack of back buttons so that when you were all done and you wanted to start backing out of the configurator, you would have to hit B over and over and over again. Well, now, as long as you haven't gone and interacted with the left column, you'll be able to go back with a single B button press. And while it's not a huge deal, it's definitely a big quality of life improvement. They also updated a few things about desktop mode as well as the dev console, but I think that most users are not going to have to worry about that stuff. But it has been months since 3.5 went into beta. When do you guys think it's coming? And what do you think is slowing things down? And while we're on the topic of the Steam Deck, it looks like the ROG Ally and the Steam Deck are about to get a new competitor from Lenovo. This is according to Windows Central. They're calling it the Legion Go. It will run Windows 11 and is supposed to be using the AMD Phoenix processors. Now, there aren't a lot of details in the leak, but one thing that has been stated is that it's going to have an 8-inch screen, which would make some PC games with tiny fonts a little bit easier to read than on the 7-inch screens of the Deck and the Ally. But here's the thing. Number one, it's just a rumor. And number two, if this is a competitor to the Deck and the Ally, it has to be cheap. That's the reason these devices are popular. You're getting a big bang for your buck. There have been tons of handheld PCs before the deck, and they were all really, really expensive. So if the Legion Go comes out and is over $1,000, then it isn't competing with the Steam Deck, in my opinion. It's not competing with the ROG Ally, in my opinion. It's competing with all those other very expensive handhelds that really don't get that much attention. But what price really puts it in competition with the Steam Deck? I think the highest that it can go to still be in competition with the deck is $700, as that's the price of the Ally. I will say it's been really fun watching this market kind of explode. The handheld PC market hardly existed before the Steam Deck. There were definitely devices being sold on Indiegogo, but not a whole lot of people paid attention, and even fewer people bought them. The Steam Deck kind of woke people up to this form factor, and a big part of that was the $400 price tag for the cheapest version. Add to that the console-like simplicity of the UI and the dollar for power, the Steam Deck is still the best bang for your buck if you're going in at that cheapest version, but it all depends on what games you want to play. I recently did a comparison video between the Ally and the deck, and make sure you stick around and watch that one after this one. Full disclosure, I am a Capcom creator, and I am a big fan of Capcom games, and they just made a very bold prediction. They said that they have an unannounced game coming out in 2024, early 2024, that is going to sell millions of copies. This was posted over at Gaming Bolt. Now the question is, which franchise is it? We've recently had releases for Resident Evil as well as Street Fighter. We know that Capcom has already announced Dragon's Dogma 2, so that can't be it because this is supposed to be an unannounced game. I'm betting it's the next Monster Hunter game, and if that's the case, I am hyped. I've easily got 200, maybe 250 hours in Monster Hunter Rise between my Nintendo Switch playthrough and my Steam Deck playthrough. But one thing I'm wondering about is, what are we going to get? You see, they sold way more copies of Monster Hunter World and Iceborne than they did Rise and Sunbreak. So will the next game in the series be more like Rise or more like World? Which would you prefer? For me, I would prefer it to be more like Rise, but the core Monster Hunter fans clearly prefer World, so I'm anticipating it to be a lot closer to that. What I'm really hoping to see is a Monster Hunter massively multiplayer online role-playing game with a persistent shared world with other players with full crossplay and full cross progression. In fact, when Monster Hunter World was first announced, that's what a lot of people assumed it was going to be because of the name World. One of the things that people might say about Monster Hunter is having the hub world is a very important key to how that game works. But I don't think so. I think it absolutely could work in an open world, but only if that open world is shared with other players that you could see and team up with on the fly. Anyway, if the game is coming out early next year, then I anticipate we're probably going to hear about it soon. Now, with Microsoft getting close on closing their Activision deal, a lot of people are starting to wonder about those Activision Blizzard games and whether or not they'll come to Game Pass and which tiers of Game Pass they'll come to. Well, Game Pass Tracker over on Twitter found this information. It looks like Activision Blizzard games will be limited to Game Pass Ultimate, which makes sense. Microsoft is trying to push Game Pass Ultimate, and the only way to do that is with big games. I mean, this is the entire reason they're buying Activision Blizzard anyway, so that they can get big games as part of Game Pass and further incentivize people to subscribe to the service. Now, it is worth noting that Rod Ferguson, Senior VP of all things Diablo, said this back when Diablo 4 was in beta. It's awesome seeing the excitement around Diablo 4 beta and our Wolfpack puppy. We've been getting some questions about Diablo 4 and Game Pass, and I want to let you know that we have no plans for that. So maybe games like Diablo 4 won't come to Game Pass, but I also clearly remember when Diablo 3 was being rumored for Switch that Blizzard put out an image of a Diablo-themed light switch, and everybody said, see, it's coming to Switch. Only for Blizzard to say that we have nothing to announce for a Switch version at this time. And then just a little bit after that, they announced the Switch version. So make sure that you take anything that they're saying with a big grain of salt. I mean, they have to say this stuff, right? I know that there's lots of people that purposely didn't pick up Diablo 4 because of the Microsoft Activision deal, and they anticipated that it would be coming to Game Pass. So saying we have no plans gets some of those people to buy the game. And they can always say, oh, well, the plans changed after Microsoft was in charge, so technically we weren't lying. But since we're on the topic of Blizzard and Game Pass, here's another question. Could World of Warcraft's subscription fee be part of Game Pass Ultimate, at least for a few months. There's two really good reasons for Microsoft to do this. Number one, it would give Game Pass players a good reason to try out World of Warcraft, give them a couple months, get their character up to level 30 or so, and then move the sub out of rotation and see how many people pick up a subscription to World of Warcraft. Number two, it would give World of Warcraft players a good reason to try out Game Pass. I mean, they're already paying $15 a month for one game, so for $2 more, they could try out Game Pass, download or stream a boatload of games, and decide, okay, Game Pass seems like a pretty good deal. I'm going to stick with it after the trial's over. Either way, it seems like you'll have to be a Game Pass Ultimate subscriber to get access to whatever Activision Blizzard games do come to Game Pass, but honestly, I think that's over 80% of those subscribers anyway. And with the big stories out of the way, let's talk about some of the smaller stories, starting with Sony updating to their beta software. It brings with it a whole bunch of new features related to accessibility, Dolby Atmos support, and a few UI enhancements, but it also brings with it the ability for the PS5 to support SSDs up to 8 terabytes. Now, don't get too excited because 8 terabyte SSDs are pretty pricey, coming in at nearly $1,000 for the cheapest ones. But if you have buckets of cash and you're sick of swapping out games you have installed on your PS5, feel free to use the link in the description to pick up an 8 terabyte SSD for your PS5. Just make sure you have access to the beta first. There's also a link down below that like button to let you know how to sign up for the beta. And a quick update on those lost Activision Transformers games. Recently, the CCO of Activision responded to the discussion that they had lost the source code for old Transformer video games. This was due to a comment made during a Q&A session by a Hasbro spokesperson. They said Activision had lost the code for those games and you wouldn't be able to replace them on Game Pass when the Microsoft deal closed. Well, it turns out that was incorrect. Lulu Chang Menaservi, the CCO of Activision, tweeted that the games were not lost and never were. So, crisis averted, I guess. But I hate to harp on this all of the time. We do need these companies to take game preservation more seriously, and recently we had a conversation about this on the latest episode of the NerdNest podcast, so make sure that you guys subscribe if you haven't checked that out. Moving on to Discord, which is partnered with both Microsoft and PlayStation, it's about to get a whole lot more useful on the Xbox. Currently, you can only use Discord to chat with your friends, which you could do on my Discord server. It's free, link in the description. But pretty soon, you'll also be able to stream to Discord for your friends from your Xbox. This comes from Tom Warren on Twitter. Microsoft is improving the Discord Xbox integration with streaming support. You'll soon be able to stream your Xbox gameplay to your Discord friends. Now, if you don't have access to this feature yet, it's because you're either not in the Xbox Insiders program or you're not in the right ring. Basically, Microsoft slowly rolls out these features to larger and larger groups over time, which is a great way to test features out like this. It seems like Microsoft is getting these features first, as when Discord originally launched on Xbox, you needed to use your phone to activate voice chat, which is how it's currently done on PlayStation. So I'm betting what's happening is Discord is starting out testing things on Xbox, and then once they got it working there, they update it, and then they start working on the PlayStation version. So I'm pretty sure the Xbox and PlayStation will be at feature parity on Discord eventually, which is awesome, as Discord is my preferred form of social media. As far as streaming, I don't personally stream to Discord. That's what I have YouTube for, but there are times where I feel like streaming, but I don't want to make a thumbnail and go through all of that nonsense. I just want to be able to chat with people while I play a game. So here's a question. Would you watch me stream a game on Discord, whether it's from my Xbox, my PlayStation, my Switch, or my PC, or maybe some retro games? Let me know. If there's enough interest, maybe I'll give it a try. Destiny 2 is looking to clamp down on cheating. This also comes to us from Tom Warren over at The Verge. The days of Destiny 2 cheaters being free to engage in wholesale assault on Destiny 2 game and its community without fear of consequences are over. This is the opening for a lawsuit against the devs of Ring 1 cheat software for Destiny 2 on Windows, and specifically Intel Windows. I don't particularly like covering lawsuits as I'm not a lawyer and I don't have the expertise needed to add anything of substance, but I will say that I loathe people that cheat in online games. Single player games, cheat all you want. I don't care even a little. In fact, I've used rewind features in emulation before, and that is technically cheating. But that kind of cheating has no effect on anyone else's enjoyment of a game that they paid for. I look at cheating like this. In online games, it's the equivalent of going to the movies and shouting out spoilers during the opening trailers. So I'm happy to see companies defend their players from others that would ruin their experience. I think too often we've seen companies let it go because they're afraid to alienate a section of their player base. Last up, Baldur's Gate 3 releases on PC today and PlayStation later. I've been really torn about where to play. I had the early access build of the game on Google Stadia and I really enjoyed it. I know that Larian is targeting 30 frames per second on Steam Deck, and they've specifically said that they want to support the deck a year ago when the Steam Deck launched. And 30 frames per second is absolutely fine for a game like this. There's no need for high frame rates in order to enjoy it. So the deck might be the best place to play, but I also played the game using a controller on Stadia and it was not a good experience. Now on the Steam Deck, I may be able to remedy that using Steam Input. If I can find a good layout, I will let you know. If not, I'll probably just end up playing it on mouse and keyboard, which will make me a bit sad as the main reason I picked it up on Steam was for the portability. Anyway, let me know how you're playing Baldur's Gate 3. It's a fantastic game, at least it was when it was in early access, and I'm excited because now I don't have to worry about starting over again as Larian deletes early access stuff with new builds. Well, that does it for this video. If you enjoyed it, you're probably going to enjoy this video as well. From the NerdNest, I'm Bill. Stay rad, everybody.